Is that alright, Georgie? 1, 2, 2 stars, 2 stars, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay.
Anyone who's touching George? Yes, that's me.
1, 1, 1, 1. Georgie. Georgie. I'm not going to listen to all the names. I'm just calling the name. I'm just calling the name, August.
Test. Say my name, say my name.
Hello, 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 above. Is that wrong word? No, hello. Right? Mostly.
Treble. Treble or mid?
1, 1. 1, 1, 1. Mostly. Hello? Yes, can I ask a question? Hello, can you hear me?
Order!
That's the wind. Put up the scales. That's the wind. 1. Hello, can I speak to? Hello, Captain. Who's the captain of the ship?
Oh, God, there ain't no ships here.
There's no ship. Where is the captain of the ship? Huh? We're not? Oh my God, somebody tricked me. I think it was.
Alright, hello everybody. Wow, what a turnout. Welcome to the Sunday afternoon chess club. Today we have David-jae-sonne-giaramita. He's come here to share his wealth of knowledge and experience of what's going on in this world. Videos and photos are okay. David's going to be recording this and he's going to be posting it on his site. So I'm handing out information on David's site. So we'll be uploading it to the website. Food. Unfortunately, the chip shop don't open until 4 o'clock. So those who wanted fish and chips, you're going to have to wait until 4 o'clock. There are snacks at the bar, etc. So yeah, just have to sort yourself out. Donations. Thank you to all those that have donated so far. For those who can afford it, just bang a fiver in there. That would be great. We're going to have a break at 1:30, 2 o'clock. So say 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Then yeah, we'll have a break at 2. Okay, so over to David. Welcome.
I am pleased to meet you. I am honoured and privileged to be here. I want to say thank you to the organisers and to a man commonly known as Gav.
Yes, Gav.
Yes, for getting me here and making this happen. And I want to say well done and thank you to you all for giving up your Sunday and giving a rat's ass about what's going on and wanting to find out how we can make things better. So an introduction from myself would be, I'm from Rugby, Warwickshire. I'm born in England, council estate, working class, not privileged, dyslexic, ADHD, in trouble with the police. So I'm on a level with you. I'm not academic at all. I've brought some materials when you hear me talk about how we see things and why we see things the way we see them. I like to have the proof of claim, the substance over the form. I've got into this not because of the Cesta KV or chasing a pot of gold. There's nothing wrong with that because we do need to face bankruptcy, surety, you know, and the legal positions that are at play. I got into this through access to my children at High Court. So it was a 2-year battle, £20,000, solicitor leading up to a barrister, going up to the Crown Court to get a writ from a judge. So the judge could see that I was a fair and fit dad and I could get access to my property after a family breakup. And then I've been privy to my mum, Julia Jaramita, who was working at Derby Law Department, Derby University, and she was a lecturer at the time, and she promoted miscarriages of justice throughout the work, women's rights, and and other areas of law that the university required her to lecture in. And as I was going through the court to get access for my boys, property, you may hear me mention my blood, my young stars as property, but that's not an archaic term, that's exactly what they are. Property at law, property rights and titles. So my mum explained to me when I was confused going through the court system that I have a legal personality and that they're speaking legalese in court. And I thought it was on the face of it, as it seems. But then you learn, or you will learn, or most of you will know, that there is a legal personality at play. That's your straw man, the birth certificate, your national insurance number, your date of birth, a surname, and I was quite surprised at what I was entwined within. and that's as much as I really need to say. That's a bit of background of me, who, what, why, where, and when. And then after the presentation at the court and getting access to my boys, I thought I need to tell people about this. I need to let people know the situation at hand, because I had first-hand knowledge going through the court system, and my mum being under the dean at the Derby University of the law department. I had, authorised, orthodox, genuine information, first-hand knowledge, so it wasn't watching YouTube videos or hearing it word of mouth from others. And then that led me into creating a Facebook group, cyber solicitors at the time, and then that changed to Sovereign Solicitors, which changed to Sovereign Paralegals, which is then changed to Sovereign Paraloreful. And there wasn't much talk of sovereignty at the time in 2015, thereabouts, so when I did this. You will have heard the media, the narrative, the rhetoric of the nation and the government with regards to parliamentary sovereignty. Sovereignty has been mentioned a lot over the last few years with Brexit and the state of play and where we're at. But sovereignty in itself, we're here today, and I want to give you my background on sovereignty, take pictures of the publications at the front there, which is I've brought to you a varied, small selection of my library. Sovereignty in itself is a grey area, it seems, but sovereignty for me starts when Mum is giving us life. Some people term it as a female ejaculation. Mum gives birth. But she's not giving birth, she's borning life. Life is coming into play, and when Mum is in labour in the hospital, what does the doctor, I forget the name of the person that delivers the baby other than the midwife, but what do they say when baby is coming into this world? Baby is crowning. So right at the beginning, we go all the way back to when we come into this realm, this matrix, this dimension of madness, this divine comedy. Mum crowns all of us. So when it mentions in the Bible, crowns, the kingdom of heaven, sovereignty, Jesus, persons, and certain things like that. Sovereignty is mentioned in the KJV over 200 times. All right, so that's one area of sovereignty and reasons to look at why we could change our status from public legal person to a private, lawful, authentic being. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it says, and I paraphrase, but it's there for you to find. I have a Quran, I have a KJV, I have brought you the Jerusalem Bible, and there are many other Bibles of which I'm sure you've encountered. My favourite would be the Ethiopian Bible, with 88 books, and in itself, it's not translated to English, but we go back from the Greeks, from the phonetic, Hebraic, Aramaic text in the beginning, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, and then we look at the Romans and the New World Testament, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Catholicism, moving all the way through. So I've done that work for you, and you need to do that work yourself. Don't take my word today or believe anything I say. I make mistakes. I'm doing it as an improv. So, we'll take questions later on, I think, throughout the day of what concerns you. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, and when God breathed life, the breath, into Adam, man became a living soul. So, I'm not a free man on the land, and I'm not a sovereign citizen, because to be sovereign would be to be self-governing, private, good self-governance, no dependence, no authority from other than me. So you look at the judges in America and YouTube and other media thought, intellectual freedom thought movements, and we often encounter such rejection from the legal establishment as you're a sovereign citizen, a free man on the land. So we need to remove the plausible deniability. Can I just get that bottle of water, Georgie, without killing them? Thank you. So we look at sovereignty in itself and how to prove that from the very beginning, and those are the articulations and my beginning reasons for that. Sovereignty, sovereign in itself. I've spoken to Santos Bonacci a few years ago, and I followed the work of Jordan Maxwell, and I've looked at everybody's opinion on sovereignty and how we can competently, coherently proclaim that we have a person and we are not a person. If you want to be a person and you want the public liabilities of that person, then you can do so. But that is not always the best way to conduct your business. What else do I need to mention about sovereignty that's relevant? The United Nations, uniform United Nations, and I know that's not everybody's favourite cup of tea, but just bear with me while I go through the, removing the plausible deniability is what we need to do. I've looked at Magna Carta, Freeman on the Land, Practical Lawful Descent, Stephen McRae, Tom Crawford, Justin Walker. I've been in this a long time now, 15 years, and I've worked out an articulation to give to you, which will remove plausible deniability. It removes the allegory, and it removes the supposition. The allegory is where we read chapter and verse, or we read academic publications that have changed the truth to suit them over the course of history. So there's interpretations in the KJV, and you can read into them many layers, and all of those interpretations can be right depending on the circumstance. The King James 1611 authorised version of the Bible is basically what the London Templars legal law system is based upon. That's the New World Order in effect, in my opinion, and through my work. So we have to look at, how did I find that out? The 10 commercial maxims of law, which govern the law of England and Wales, have accompanying them the biblical precepts. So that was a flashpoint for me, and seeing Latin as well. So with English law, the London Templars since 1066, 1067 have ensconced themselves in London. William the Conqueror was unable to beat them, and so he conquered all the lands, but he couldn't get into London City, what you know as London, what we know as London City. London City has ensconced itself since 1066, 67 in London Town. So London Town is not London City. London City is the square mile of London where the Masonic Sun Temple is, and the High Courts, and its own postcode, its own jurisdiction, its own police. So we look at territories and foreign territories and who and what and where we are. And all of my work and research has been brought to you over the last 15 years. So we need to know how to interface and deal with officers, constables, the UK present Directorate of the UK government, which is United Kingdom. The Queen and Charlie Boy are the monarchs of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is not England and Wales. The World Cup is on now, but nobody's out there supporting the United Kingdom because they're supporting England. So there is jurisdiction separation as well. So leading on from that, I would need to talk to you and bring up the fact that when we look at jurisdictions and sovereignty and souls and legal persons, natural persons, we need to know what language they're speaking. And as I was introduced to legalese by my mum, I thought that was English they were speaking. It's a very deceptive language. It has implied meanings and definitions that are not like the Oxford Dictionary. They are found in Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary is the language and the implied meanings and definitions of the Law Society. I'm speaking my mother's tongue. I'm speaking, hello Albert, well done, thank you brother. He's had a long journey up. He's one of the admins for SPLs in the purple hoodie there. So that's one thing. Implied meanings, definitions, language, Black's Law Dictionary. Then we have Oxford Dictionary, the common language of the land, and mother's tongue, Babel, as it's known in Babylon. And as you've heard, or you will have found through your discoveries and the journeys of, and in the music, you hear the MC DJ there that's set up, putting on some reggae tunes. The other cultures have a different opinion to us of what the police, the law, the religion, the churches, through our education, we've been patronised into believing that what we are taught is correct. We're going through somewhat of a big disclosure now with regards to science, language, religion, money, especially after the last 2 years. I've got a lot of skin in the game, and I've got videos on my channel where I'm on the telephone and I've been called up by members of our private trust Facebook group, those in our community, and for me to come out and be able to speak here now, I've got a lot of skin in the game and references for you with regards to how to, does it work? You need to see if it works. You want results, you want to see what we've done, when we've done it, and what the outcome was. So on the telephone, I've managed to control officers that have entered into property with debt collection agents. They're not bailiffs. You check what bailiffs are and you'll find they're not. They're debt collection, third-party officious intermeddlers and adhesion contracts and certain civil matters. So I've on my channel got evidences for you where I am on the telephone. I'm not present at the property on numerous occasions, and through the administration of the events at hand with the officers, and pointing out the facts. If you don't know your rights, this is a maxim of the commercial maxims of English law. If you don't know your rights, then you are viewed to have no rights, which is why you need a solicitor representation and things such as that. Officers aren't trained in law, at law. They are trained within rules and policy of the United Kingdom Corporation. So they can't use rules and policy of the UK corporate establishment to break the laws of England and Wales. So as it's a civil matter, they have no jurisdiction. So it's all about keeping calm, being polite in the face of, yes, it's very hard, adversity. These situations occur and people generally get lost in the moment. So the officers have insisted that they're effecting and executing a lawful legal warrant. And I've asked them if they're officers or constables. They don't know the difference. I've asked them to provide a warrant card for the execution of the warrant. They refuse to do that. I asked them why they're at the property when this is a civil matter, and I defend the rights. I retain the rights. I reserve the rights of the person that's given me authority to speak on their behalf regarding legal matters. And some of the officers turn into constables. Some of them hang up the phone. Some of them are impartial and just want to be there to make sure there's no breach of the peace. So we can do that, we've done that, there's evidences for that, and without us actually being there. So we want to teach this information to everybody that's in our family. We want to make this common knowledge. We need to strengthen our position with where we are. So it's led me, this research has led me down, and I'm sure it has for a great many of you, down paths of which we never thought we'd be in. I'm a warehouse worker, I was a warehouse manager, council estate, single parent with many afflictions, and I've managed to do what I'm doing. And you all can too, and with the help and support and resources of these kind of environments, groups, what would we call them, communities. We need to think en masse now, and we need to be able to approach government and now administer our estates, so we're no longer commingling the jurisdictions of the public and the private. That is easier said than done, but we reference, other than the historical components through the annals of time and even into antiquities, we have to, when we make a claim at law, we are duly obliged to provide the material facts of the matter. If anybody makes a claim on you, you have the right to remain silent. That's so you don't self-incriminate. In America, they can plead the fifth. So why do we have the rights to silence? Why do we have these rights given to us? Because if someone's going to make a claim and they haven't got any evidence, then they may want to detain you, abduct you. I don't say kidnap because we're not kids and kids are goats and things. I'm very up on etymology, language, because of the autistic spectrum. I'm on ADHD, Asperger's. I have a type of the brain that can, manage this, and we have to look at, the facts of the matter. So if you keep quiet and you're arrested, if you was to be arrested for a civil matter, then you are letting the claimant provide the facts of the matter. If there are no facts, then there is no claim. It's as simple as that. So quite often when we are involved with officers, they say, as they read the arrest statement, then caution, I'm not going to say it verbatim, but you are being detained, arrested, you have the right to remain silent, anything you do say or don't say, but then anything you don't say, but later rely on in court, will not be used. And then they finish with, do you understand? Well, do you stand under my authority? The language, the reverse psychology language of how they play this Divine Comedy is quite intricate, and nothing's said by chance or just because they felt like it. There is a reason for this language use and the processes they go through with the civil procedure rules. So it is interesting how we've come to move from common law, traditional common law. I'm here to promote common law, and equity was fused in with common law in the 1873-75 Judicature Act. That means that common law to us has been kept secret to some extent. We didn't know about set law, trustee and beneficiary, and trust arrangements, trust agreements. Which is interesting because common law to me was do no harm, don't defraud anybody, just be decent, be self-governing and sovereign in a way. And common law never brought to me equity. I found that by accident. Equity is the soul and spirit of the law. It is not the law. And it was a quote from John Bouvier of 1882, law of whatever, I forget the publication, but American law. You'll find it if you search John Bouvier, 1882, equity, soul and spirit of the law. So what does that mean to you? That means that common law has got a superior, higher level. When you look at the maxims or the propositions of equity, you will find that equity is there and it's a powerful, powerful weapon. But we didn't know about it. So again, if you don't know your rights and you don't know what your rights are, how do you defend and retain your rights? No one's going to tell you, and the ones that do tell you from their side of the story. So like the solicitor, the barrister, the brief, the attorney, they will tell you the Law Society's version. That's not our society. We are men and women, living souls of the land. So the maxims of equity you need to look at as well. And there's some publications there by Alistair Hudson, he's a teacher. He actually lectures at university on equity and trust. And the dual streams of common law, so legislative arm, they are what the law, when we speak of law, what law do we speak of? There are many laws. And there is LAW, land, air, water law, and then there is LORE, as in folklore, common law. It sounds the same phonetically, but it's spelled different. Unless you see it written down, you won't know the difference. Equity is proven, and it's in my publications there, and it's online, it's all free. What I'm telling you today is not secret, it's not hidden, it's just Masonic, Illuminati, Grandmaster knowledge of the bloodlines and families and institutions that are governing religiously, financially, legally. Legislation is mandated upon your person by default, and we are all assumed and presumed to be persons. And there are various forms of persons. Equity acts in personam, so it needs a person to act upon. So you can have a legal person, which I've explained, your date of birth, your name, your birth certificate, the straw man, that is a legal instrument. The birth certificate with the warning at the bottom, this is not to be used as evidence of identity. So to be sovereign is know how to identify. I have created some instruments called an evidence of life, essence and incarnation, which is something you can proclaim in front of witnesses and it will meet legal level, it will meet lawful level of England and Wales, and it will also, within the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 6, all humans are afforded a person to be represented in front at law or in front of the law. So you can politely and respectfully decline that right to be recognised as a person at law. There are natural persons, there are legal persons, there are juridical persons, and there are true persons, just a few of them. A true person is something that can be achieved if you look at an ecclesiastical deed poll. We look at the teachings of the book there, the KJV authorised version, and it will mention in Romans and Acts that with God there is no respect of persons. But why is there no respect of persons? In Psalms, the 82nd Psalm, and I must say I am a Tibetan Buddhist and a Hermeticist. I'm not here as a Christian preacher, but I use this because this is what the KJV in the Bible is what the legal law system, the New World Order, is based on. And so if you have the ratifications in the United Nations and international treaties where the United Kingdom is on the Security Council, and these rights can be retained at different levels. The evidence of life, essence and incarnation can be tied in with the 82nd Psalm. Have I not said to ye that ye are all kings, is what JC is quoted as saying, the mystical teacher in the world's greatest story. So what does that mean then in reality? He's saying that we're all kings. If we're all crowned at birth and we are not persons, as it mentions in Acts and Romans, then we can use that handbook to navigate our way competently and coherently with legal backup, with lawful backup, with United Nations backup, and then lastly, 3 men as witnesses. You've heard possibly that wherever there are notices to be required and notarized, you could perhaps get a notary to authorize and say that the person that is, or the author that has authored that document, instrument, and signed it is actually true, a notarization. And you can get notaries with regards to, I forget which chapter and verse, but it says wherever, Jesus is quoted as saying, wherever 2 or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So, translating again into legal speak, in a high court where there's a case going off, say the Sarah Everard case or something, it's been in the public domain recently, where there was an abduction, rape and possible murder, it seems, by a police officer. These high courts will then take the testimony of witnesses, before, as they try, convict and sentence a criminal or the accused. So there is no evidences other than testimony, facts given in the court. And if there are 2 or more witnesses in a High Court of England and Wales, then that's all that will be needed to satisfy the court to then try, convict and sentence or acquit the accused. So it's interesting for me to stumble upon this in itself, the multifaceted dimensions of where we're at, and it encompasses money, religion, language, education, and we have a right to assert ourselves. And my job here today with the organisers is to help you understand who you are, where you are, when you are, and how to retain and reserve your rights and to be private. The public has liabilities, and we are all presumed and assumed to be a public legal person. That could be a trustee, the trustee in effect legally responsible for accounting, for yourselves. And if we answer to a name, a date of birth, a surname, then we've agreed by tacit acquiescence that we are going to be that public legal person. We could look at implementing the instrumentation. So how would we do that? Well, I am a party. I am a party to the facts. Me, myself, and I. And we have also, in religious areas, the soul, the spirit, the body. I'm a vessel housed in this body. I'm a spirit housed in this vessel, or vassal. A spirit, a soul, a consciousness. I am not a name. A name in English linguistical styles and grammatical styles denotes an object, a thing, a noun. and we are not things, nouns and objects. A noun in English language, in the Oxford language, a noun starts with a capital letter. Names start with a capital letter. So give me your name. What is your name? I don't have a name. I'm commonly known as David. My person has a name. Would you like the details of my person? What is this? You know, where are you coming from? Officers stopping me, traffic officers. When I've been in court helping others, we discharged charges at Oxford Magistrate Court for a traffic fine. Again, skin in the game, witness, testimony, evidence, and we recorded it all. It took a long time for us to get the magistrates to even be able to get their heads around that we have a person, we have a driver, and we implement that. And the ways that I've just given you in the last 30 minutes give you an idea of how and why we can do that without being branded a sovereign citizen, a lunatic, someone that needs mental health, a free man on the land, and etc. So it's the way that you conduct yourself and hold others to account. Management of persons implementing the instrumentation would be the birth certificate, you know, and having that disclosure on that. We've got to look at presenting the facts of the matter to the officers, the claimants, and if they don't understand us and they're not legally trained or they're not lawfully trained, magistrates definitely aren't, and officers aren't, constables aren't. But we have a chief constable, not a chief officer, Sir Mark Rowley. If you go to my website homepage and you look at the stories on the front page of what we cover, I'm looking there because you've got a leaflet there, my man, there, that we've handed out. If you go to splspro.com and familiarise yourself with who and what we are and how we have learned to present and handle our estates, hopefully you will see what kind of integrity we have with regards to this. Moving from the public to the private is easier said than done. Public liabilities, the public comes with liabilities. The private is the commingling of jurisdiction, so there's a public trust in effect. It seems there is a public trust. Ministers in office, ministerial code, ministers are found within the church. We have a merger of church and state here at the moment, which is why the merger of church and state in England and obviously the United Kingdom is important for us to be able to use the information which is relevant, you know, and fire it back to them. The public legal persons, if you don't know you're a public person, then you can't start to retain your rights, and if you don't know how to articulate and move from being a public legal person to something like a private lawful man or woman, then this is where we are here to help. Has anybody heard of equity before? Put your hand up, please. Yeah, show me some hands. Right, and have you heard of equity with regards to mortgages and finances, or was it law? If it was money and mortgages, hands up, and if it, yeah? So that's it, yeah, equity comes into finance, money, mortgages, and then equity within the common law area. Has anybody heard of that, or used it, or know of it, yeah? Okay. So the areas of equity aren't just to do with trust. When a trust is formed, equity is there to govern and manage that trust, the trustees to look after the beneficial interests. When you look at the 1882 quote from John Bouvier's Publications for Law Publications of America, you will see he explains that equity is not the law, but it is the soul and spirit of the law, and it intends to do what should be done, is what ought to be done. So at common law levels, with legislation, common law, and issues that we find, it's black and white, and it's not always fair what the result is. If you look at equity, equity can be there to supplement the common law. It runs alongside the common law, but nobody will tell you about it unless you invoke it, you use it. So it's again, I'm just ballparking, and we'll take questions afterwards, so I don't want to overload you. I'm trying to go slow and keep it relevant and coherent. When you look at a last will and testament, a testament, 1302, Pope Boniface, Unum Sanctum. Hands up if you've heard of that. Yeah, the world's, not the world's first, but the official legal record of a testamentary trust. So trusts can be expressed, they can be written, They come in various forms and jurisdictions, but their evidence is there and it's in history. A last will and testament is something that we need to touch upon. When I mentioned about witnesses, Matthew, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am with them. So therefore, in courts, testamentary, and you testify. So we have testees for the men, down below. We have testa and testee. So I look into the language, the words, the Latin and so forth, and a testamentary trust, a last will and testament. You do not need a solicitor, a notary, a barrister. You don't need any of the law society to execute a last will and testament. It's not the most strongest form of a trust, but it's where you would need to look at starting point to reclaim your title rights to property. Powers of attorney are always good to look at, because I believe the state have got powers of attorney through their assumptions and presumptions of where we're at right now through their administration of our estates. When we talk of estates, my estate is Giaramita, my family's estate is Giaramita. You all have estates to speak of. It's not just the aristocracy that have estates, and this is to do with estate management. It is interesting because you give your solicitor power of attorney. You might give a conveyancing solicitor power of attorney. Powers of attorney you could give to your friend when you are not very well and you want someone to look after you, because if you don't put these measures in place and you for some reason randomly slip on the ice, bang your head, lose your memory, then who's going to look after you? The state normally steps in and will step in and will take over management and your estate. But if you put alternative provisions in place, then you can have them and these assigned powers of attorney take over the management of your bank accounts, rent, mortgage, family, children, ringing the boss, getting them all on the same page. Otherwise, offices of government will take this, Office of Public Guardian. When you assign powers of attorney, the OPG or Office of Public Guardian would be somewhere for you to research and look at. A last will and testament to look at the first introduction of trusts, and express private trusts are very powerful, and they are recognised at law in the courts of England and Wales. Knight versus Knight is the case law you want to see, the precedent established where the judge ruled that the three certainties must be satisfied for a valid trust to be established. And in Knight versus Knight, you will find the relevant case law for that, which is entwined within the common law, which we didn't become privy to with Magna Carta, common law, traditional common law, research and management, practical lawful dissent, and other such movements, intellectual freedom, thought movements that are around, or have been around. So this is something very important to me. Not many people or enough people know of their rights, who they are, that they have persons, how to evidence a person, how to implement the instrumentation. The equitable instrument would be considered by me as the birth certificate. The equitable asset would be considered as the signature, sigil, signature, sign of nature, sign nature, signature, sigils, witches, spells, spelling, casting a spell, becoming entranced. When you wake up, you are waking up in the morning. When you go to somebody's funeral who has passed, you are mourning at the wake. When a ship travels in the ocean, it leaves behind it a trail. That trail is its wake. So again, it's very dark when we look at the Divine Comedy and other such publications and scriptures and passages and different cultures, different Bibles. We are assimilating, I have assimilated an extensive amount of information with the help of other people, Jordan Maxwell, Santos Bonacci, Neville Goddard, Alan Watt. There's a lot to mention. There's too many. Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Quantum, Divine Consciousness, Spirit, Souls, Language, Wars, Money, Religion, and I've got a lot of resources and publications. I'll pass Gav some in Telegram chat that is free to share with you all. I would like to work in union and form an alliance. We, when I say I, we, SPLS Pro, myself, the admins, with with the organisers, with Pete. We'll see what we can do, link up and strengthen. I'm very happy to see sovereignty being talked about and mentioned a lot more than it was, especially exclusively to the state and parliamentary, or the sovereignty to do with the monarchy. And the last little bit of sovereignty that I want to give you is, in the middle of the 20th century, the Queen's coronation, she was given sovereignty by the people. I don't like referring to us as people, but for the narrative and the vernacular, the vocabulary of the state, church and state, we need to address this. So you cannot give anything which you do not possess. So if we, the people of England in the 1950s, gave the Queen sovereignty, then we must have had it ourselves to give. Otherwise we could not have let the Queen be sovereign. So anybody says, oh, it's only the monarchy, David, that's a sovereign, or to you, oh, it's only you're off your head, you smoke too much weed, you're worried about your mental health, you can come back at them with, you know, it's often the case. And then when they come to meet me, or I meet others in the offices of government, police, and so forth, the judges, and in documents that I've written, I've put this for people to consider. So the truth is fundamentally, it's there for you to discover. It's unequivocally, you know, fact of matter. So there is a lot of areas to do with sovereignty, the terms, the languages, the medical areas, the legal areas, the religious areas, with the control mechanisms that we see within England and Wales, dictated from courts and establishments and institutions that are seeded within London City, then branching out from London City Square Mile into England and Wales, but they assume that we all are in the United Kingdom. I think I'll leave it there for now, because I've said quite a lot. I'm not stopping, I just want to take a breath, let that absorb, and say hello to Albert. Thank you to the SPL's fam that have arrived to support down at the bottom in the corner, hanging out at the back. Barney, Michelle and Bert, thank you. Thank you all for turning up. And this is, like I say, an improv, and I want to just touch upon the key areas of which we all need a starting block. You know, I can only go as fast as the slowest person in the room. I can't, you know, run ahead of myself as much as I've got masses of information and things that I want to tell you. I want to keep it slow and relevant, and maybe open up to some questions, or the organisers, if you've got any direction or anything, or I'll carry on. I'm quite happy.
Carry on for another 20 minutes, David, and then
Yeah.
we'll have a break. That'll take us to 1:30. We'll
Yeah.
have a break, and then we'll come back and then do an open questions and answers, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will look at putting, I've promoted this event heavily on my YouTube channel. On YouTube, if you look for Indie Glow, it's INDI, as in IndyCar racing, and then second word is Glow, GLOW. You will find a king icon with doing a fist bump on YouTube. You've got the link to my website there. I will share with Gavin and Pete, Georgie, the other links that you may need that they can hand out, and if we can have a reciprocation and form some kind of mutual alliance, I'm happy to do so. And we don't ask for money. I am the founder and the principal trustee of a private trust, SPLS Pro, Sovereign Paraloreful, and we have put all the information in there. We have a Facebook group you can join for free. For those that don't want Facebook, we've got the private domain, we've got IndieGlow on YouTube, and then we've got public and private Telegram groups for you to link up with us. And I would like to promote what you do. I've had a look at some of your material and content, Pete, and I especially liked a bit what I've seen which said about affidavits, and I think it was on about marriage. Affidavits are one of the most strongest instruments at law you could ever use. If you don't know what an affidavit is, in a nutshell, it's a rescue boat, and if it's left unrebutted, it's very, very powerful. You will find in the 10 commercial maxims of law, it mentions about an unrebutted affidavit, and it also mentions there that at law the truth is considered sovereign. So if you're all here telling truth, or you're out there telling truth, you are classified as sovereign that way, as in the 10 commercial maxims of law and the biblical precepts. And the affidavit that I saw Pete talking about, the topic he was talking about, and I like the bit where you said you don't need to use their forms, their instruments, you can communicate with them and convey messages to them, and that's as good as. You don't need to fill in the WBC1X and get that, send that, stamp that, turn that, click your heels 3 times. Oh no, but that's what they get us to do. So we don't use their forms either. We like to affix separate paper to their forms and convey it in different ways. Sometimes you do have to use their forms, and you can sign with full public liability. When you sign something, you're applying consideration. The consideration is the signature is shown as when you apply the equitable asset, the signature to their paperwork. You are bonding it, you're authorising it, you're consenting to it, you're agreeing to it, you've given consideration, and you've added your valuable consideration, you've accepted it for value, and you've returned it for that value that it is. So there is issues that we find with the paperwork, like in a court situation they might ask you to do a statutory declaration. When I was in Oxford with a member of my private trust, we had to do the presentation, or re-presentation as they call it, because you're representing the legal person to them, and they wanted a statutory declaration to be done so the court could administration of justice in their administrative courts. But we failed to do that. We declined, and politely, respectfully declined to use their paperwork, and presented and went to the court in front of the 3 magistrates, the prosecution, the claimant was the traffic officer, the stand was there, myself and the representative for the driver in question, and we still managed to get heard. We presented the driver, the officer took the stand, made his claim, said that the driver was driving a commercial wagon and that he'd gone through a red light. Well, he was using his driver. The man was there in the steering wheel, operating the machine. He was commercially active, but he chose still to present his driver rather than accepting the title of driver. The police officer claimed that this lorry had gone round a corner, temporary traffic lights, warning sign on the corner, which is not in the legal requirements and Road Traffic Management Act. That was a breach. He'd gone through the temporary traffic lights, and behind him was the policeman on his own in the car, following, and he see the tail end of the lorry go through the traffic light, and he believed it was on red. So he then went into pursuit. He declared an emergency, he put his sirens on, he gave chase, he slowed down, stopped the man, and then, nutshell, gave him a ticket for failing to stop at a traffic light. At Oxford, he took the stand, he made his claim. The magistrates heard that, let the driver take the stand and make his claim. They said driver, but he said he was Thomas and that he was the representative for the driver, and they can address him and call him as Thomas. He gave his evidence, and then the court said, is there anything else to say? And this was at 5 to 5. So they deliberate, and then they adjourn, deliberate, and come out and give the verdict. I said, it's not looking good, because they close at 5, and this is quite complicated, and they're going to need some time to consider. What we did is we took down the green books. The green books are the civil procedure rules. You can find the civil procedure rules online. They're in the .gov UK. That's what govern civil courts of the United Kingdom, and to some extent high courts of England and Wales, but some of them go into criminal areas. But the civil procedure rules, abbreviated as CPR, are found online with the .gov UK. They're also referenced by me as practice directions and by the courts and the Law Society. There are pre-action protocols that need to be followed before action can ensue. And some of the pre-action protocols are proof of claim. Before you make the claim and effect legal proceedings, we need to check Lord Wolfe's reforms in the 1990s brought in what did he bring in? He brought in the alternative dispute resolution. The alternative before litigation must come mitigation, and that's all entwined within the civil procedure rules. I told you there's a lot. The civil procedure rules of the practice directions, find them online, go on eBay and type in the Green Book or civil procedure rules. I'll give you areas of this to follow and look at, and also be aware of the pre-action protocols of the practice directions. So the officers took the stand, he's made his claim, and we asked, was you on your own, or was there anybody else present that can witness these claims that you've made? He was on his own. Do you have recording equipment in your car, officer, to back up the proof of your claim that the driver's representative went through the red light? No. No camera on the officer's car, no passenger officer with him to witness this. Remember what I've talked to you about: proof, claim, witnesses, references. No traffic control measures, recording measures on the traffic lights. The temporary traffic lights didn't have a camera on them. So here we have a man making a claim who puts on a uniform in the morning and thinks that he can then go out and distribute or promulgate law. But it's just a claim, and he's on his own. So because we know what we know, and we've moved away from going to courts going, I demand to see your oath, I demand that the bond is brought out, and being vexatious and not getting anywhere, even though we're quite right to adopt that stance, we've had to, in the face of adversity, do business correctly and avoid a summary judgment or a warrant to be issued for failure to attend a court. It's quite a thin line of navigation of what you've got to adhere to everything. And the practice I took the green books down with me. They're like yay thick. It's probably that trust and equity book there in the middle that's black by Alistair Hudson. They're probably that thick. The pages are like thin as a Bible page, as a page from the Quran or anywhere. So there's two of them and supplementary publications that go with it. And we said, well, aren't we all equal in the eyes of the law? Which we should be. And that's enshrined in Halsbury's publications, in Blackstone's, in many publications. It's enshrined within the human rights, it's enshrined within articles and treaties, international ones that we've got. So when we present and we answer to a claim made on our person, we need to make sure and validate. We need to go through a few things to check before we argue the case. Is there any case to answer? Does the case have any standing? Because if it doesn't, then we can't move forward, because the pre-action protocols, the practice directions of the civil procedure rules and things haven't been followed. But the courts aren't going to tell you that. Your solicitor isn't going to tell you that. They'll conduct business as they mean to, and then that's where we get into miscarriages of justice and certain things like that. So we said to the magistrates, with all due respect, we believe, and it is written at law, that we're all equal in the eyes of the law. Anybody can put on a uniform in the morning and make a claim and think they have more authority over another, but they don't. We're all equal, and we need to know the basis of the claim, and if there is any facts of the matter, the material facts, the burden of proof needs to be provided. He has no proof. He's got a statement, and he's brought claim, and we're in Oxford Court, and we're sat for three magistrates and the prosecution. So we're looking at the prosecution when we're talking to the magistrates. We're making sure we're doing this to, let him know, we know. And I've got the books there, which, a few £100, but our trust has bought them, and I use the information in them to give to people freely, to others freely, because not everybody has the money, the resources, the time and the energy. So I can prove, you can find, and then they said, okay, yes, we hear what you're saying, we will bear that in mind. We have a statement from the officer, and we have a statement from the defendant, in this case, the driver's representative, the driver to them, and they bear that in mind when they went out at 5 to deliberate. Then the clerk come out at 5:15 and said to the prosecution, we're just going to have to go and get some expert legal advice. And we're just two men like yourselves from the street, and they came back and deliberated, and at 5:30 they came out and awarded that they were going to discharge the charges, yes. And there was discontinuation of the case and the claim due to the fact that there was insufficient evidence. So if things like this aren't known, then you and I aren't ever going to be able to articulate and defend as a layman apostolate, as however you want to deem yourselves, and you're going to pay somebody a lot of money who's in the Law Society, with the judges are in the Law Society, the police are in the Law Society, the solicitors and barristers are in that society, and as George Carlin says, it's a club, and you ain't in it, and we're not in it. So why would we then go to pay cap in hand for somebody to, you see, and when you do that, you're viewed by the court as somebody who is not competent as a child. As I forget the correct terminology and phrases, but I'm sure many of you will know it. That if you, there's a minor. You go in like probate areas and things. You don't know who you are. You don't know what your rights are within the 10 maxims of commercial law. He who fails to assert his rights is viewed as having none. So you have to assert, you have to reserve, you have to retain. A man who, on our homepage, it says something like, a man who represents himself is regarded as having a client for a fool. But you see, it's one of them, it really is. Each situation is judged on its own individual case merits. There is no blanket template for interfacing with courts and judges and officers. But with that said, it's become my life's work to create a universal, non-sectarian remedy for all. This is leaning on Eastern philosophy, on the Buddhists, on the Zen-like Eastern energy, spiritual. It's going into the Vedas a little bit, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. It's going into the Buddhist sutras, into the Japanese Shintos. It's a long journey, but I believe that the three Abrahamic faiths, which would be Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are based upon that. The KJV, the Quran, and Judaism is based on that's the area that I look at. But then you've got such society. In society, we have such members as non-Abrahamic faith, which would maybe say like the Rastafaris and the Sikhs, the Hindus, certain others. Religions and cultures that can be included in this as well, and it's my mission to be able to present to the world a way that works for Australia, England, America, whatever country or landmass you're in. This should work. If you've got a central bank, namely, then you know what the central banks are like and what they're there to do. And you've got a legal system similar to England, which England is put into India, China, Hong Kong, you know, it's all over the world. Halsbury's laws are referenced, English lectures, treaties on law by Halsbury in places, Hong Kong, China, India, all over the place. So it's relevant and articulate. Courts of equity are all around the world. Equity is equity, no matter what country you're in. And you need to know that equity is supplementary to the common laws of the land, but equity also is in effect when a trust is formed. So equity isn't exclusive to trust law. Equity is there to ensure the law does what it should do and the soul and the spirit of the law. But you won't get an equitable remedy if you don't know of it, you know. So it's one of these where we're on a learning curve. We've all been tricked, we've all been deceived, you know, lest ye be deceived. The language, you know, the setup, it's important that we try to start from the beginning and work our way forward. And for us, the beginning is being born by the waters of mum. And I say the language is fantastic. I love etymology. I love the language. I love finding the root words and the Latin in itself. You know, I've got Italian, Greek blood, but I don't speak Latin. Or even Italian, but it's useful to throw in a few little, you know, phrases of theirs just to let them know that you know. It's been a big journey, and I never, ever imagined that I would be here doing what I'm doing today. And nothing for. I wanted to be a superstar DJ, materialistic, you know. I'll be honest. I had dreams. Yeah, hey.
Still time.
Oh, there's still time. Yeah, there is indeed. I work in a warehouse. I'm from a council estate. I'm born in England. I have Greek, Italian, English, Irish lineage. You know, we're all one family, and we need to look at this. We need to look at, you know, getting resources, getting the Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, non-faithful, spiritual, all sectors of society, and we can help one another, and we can do a lot of good. You'll have seen in the news a lot of the last 2 years. The Good Law Project got Matt Hancock dealt with. Oh, bless you, thank you, my lord. And that was effective. There's been lots of good things happening. I know time now is a little bit uncertain, it's a little bit dark, it's a little bit, there's no stability. We're all looking out for ourselves. We're trying to put fuel in the car, pay the rent, pay the council tax, manage everything, discharge charges that are brought to us. And I think now is a brilliant time to be alive. I think we're going to be judged by our children in the future on what we allow to be done and what is done now. And it's not a white English, Saxon, Anglo thing. It's a community of this diverse demographic that we've got. And it's about building them bridges and working out that there's more that unites us than that separates us. And there's people out there that are talking rubbish, such as the Church of Scientology, and they've got a bigger amount of resources than any of us could ever dream of. So the church, again, the denominations of the church have got a lot of the denominations of money. So again, it's about working out what we've got and moving into the private, knowing how to be private, touching on some of the areas that I've briefly given you today, teaching you how to recognise, manage a person, signing with or without liability. That's interesting. Basically, as I said, names, capital letter, noun, object, thing, Oxford linguistics, and somewhat into syntaxing. Just English syntax, not windmill or parse syntax, correct sentence, just syntax. You can sign or you can autograph. And an autograph, when you meet a celebrity, you wouldn't ask for their signature. You don't ask for their signature, you ask for their autograph. Now this autograph is lower case always. There's no capital letter. So when I autograph a legal document, it's not actually validated because it hasn't been signed. But nobody in your world, in my world, knows the difference between a legal signature and a document that's had an autograph on it. So if you afford on any bit of paper a signature with the capital letter, that's as the author and the authority applied autonomously has given that document life, and it's now considered in effect and legal. If you want to look at autographs and put in B-Y, as in by, and David, that then denotes that there is let me think of the word, settlor, grantor, what did you say? Oh, that's right. That denotes that there is the principle present, we'll say then, the principality, the principle, and the source of where the energy comes from.
I've got to sign my passport.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, because I've had it for a while and I've got to sign it, and I'm thinking, shall I just go with what they're saying and put my signature on it, or put all rights reserved and sign it like you're saying with a lower case?
That's something to be considered, yeah, because ultimately we should have exemption from these requirements and instruments, and we should have some form of diplomatic way to do commerce, travel, etc., trade, barter, levy. But if you put by and then lowercase, the given name, the calling name, the Christian name, then that should help retain and reserve. So you can put all rights retain. You could put by, and then lowercase autograph.
But I suppose they're actually asking for my signature.
So I've done the same on my passport. I've put by David, and it's been put on there. And then when I got the passport for my person, who's a British citizen, so now we've got UK, United Kingdom of England, of Great Britain, we've got England and Wales, and then we've got British citizens and Britain itself. So jurisdictions and the areas of where laws lie is quite interesting. But yeah, to retain and reserve rights by putting by and David, or by and John, by and whoever, then that's not a signature, and it retains your rights. It's a way of retaining your rights. People told me, you put the 3 dots here and you put the 3 dots there, that means that it's left open. I can't find the source for that. I don't know where that comes from. I can't say that as 100% fact. 3 dots. If anybody knows where that's come from, if they've heard of this and they know where to reference it from, then I would like to know. Otherwise, we try not to circumvent the propositions of equity, trust law, and contract law and English linguistic syntax and grammar. So there's a method to the madness. Before we shut down, words with AU, autograph, authority, autonomously, they all begin, they're powerful words and they begin with AU. We look into gematria and we look into, by accident, scientific areas, the periodic table of elements. You're as good as gold. Your word is your bond. And AU is on the periodic table of elements is a symbol for gold. So strong, golden, it seems a tedious link, but we note it as we move along when we're finding out all of these other areas of what we're talking about today. So as I say, there's a reason why words are the words they are in this Babel, or even in the legal language. You need to be able to differentiate between when it's legalese presented to you, who is you must pay. Okay, well, who is you? Who does you reference? It doesn't say Mr. David is hereby declared the money courts have issued, nothing like that, is it? It's very ambiguous, and the styles, the letters, the underlining, the threats, the intimidation, it's the game we're in. So we haven't got all the answers, but moving forward, I think we'll get a lot further than we would if it was on our own.
Yeah.
Yes, go on. Yeah.
So they accepted that without a second name or family name.
When the application went in, I did it with the post office because I was rushing and I needed to get out to see my mum in Greece. And I was aware of what I was doing. I did it knowingly. I needed a passport, so they did all of that with regards to the administration and it being in my person's name, including the family name, date of birth, everything that's required. But then on that same document, I put, when it needed to be signed, by David, lowercase, and then when I got the passport, I put by David again. And on the photograph, what they give you on the passport, it does say by David. So it's done autonomously and it's an autograph and not a signature. That's not the ultimate remedy for such a situation, but it's a way that we need to start thinking, and we need to recognise why we do that, why a signature starts with a capital letter and lowercase, why the name starts, and so we found the reasons for that and we can evidence that. But moving forward, we need to manage the estates so we don't commingle the jurisdictions of them, and we need to communicate with higher levels of government effectively to let them know. And when we do that, we're working on a remedy for exiting the matrix, moving from the public to the private, and collapsing the constructive trust and moving it to the private areas. We have got some ideas and instruments that we need to send to higher levels of government, and when we do so, we need to provide the material facts of the matter and the claim. So birth includes stillbirth. When you look at the Births, Deaths and Marriages Act of 1800, and it's there on the .gov.uk, it says when I searched the act, birth, but the interpretations at the bottom of the page on the .gov.uk, birth includes stillbirth. And then there's a little bit of Latin that goes in with law that we found, inclusio est alterius exclusivo. That's me paraphrasing, it might have a word or two missing, but that's general. I have videos and topics on this, I've done the work for you. The inclusion of one excludes the others. So if you're including stillbirth in your interpretations on .gov.uk of the Birth, Deaths and Marriages Act, you're excluding birth. So that's where I believe these like, I'm alive and not dead. David, how do I prove I'm alive? Well, you have a thumbprint. Speaking of the kings, and I have a crown there to denote my connection with my good lady instead of getting married. The crown, the prints, the thumbprints. So you've got PRINTS as in print, but then you've also got the crown prints, princes, princesses. So the print is how I denote who I am. They used to use blood back in the day for certain things, but there's only one of them, and that's my identity, if you want. That's my mark, my seal, my stamp, and that's also when you put by David, depends on the level of the law and the offices that you're speaking to, because the school aren't going to notice, the principals, vice principals or head of year doesn't need to see a thumbprint and David, because he doesn't know, they're not trained. But in the areas of government and courts, they will know, they will recognise the referencing to persons, public, private, and moving from their jurisdiction. So I think we'll leave it there, yeah?
Yeah.
For now.
Oh, yeah. Nice one, David. So if we have like an half-hour break, go and get warmed up. Sorry about the heating. We tripped out the electric, so I did try and keep it warm. So go and get yourself something from the bar and give it half hour. We'll come back for questions and answers. Cool.